Welcome back to r/legal advice, where people ask questions, get advice, and we get satisfaction. If you are new around here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join our awesome community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. Today's story is titled "Wife Tested Positive for General Drugs During Delivery, CPS is Involved, She Does Not Do Drugs, How Do We Proceed?" MD for jurisdiction. My wife and I went to the hospital last Tuesday for a scheduled induction where she delivered via C-section. At the time of admittance, they administered a hospital-grade drug test which came back positive for a general opioid. We were very shocked by this, since neither of us do any drugs at all. She did, however, eat an everything bagel about 5 hours prior to our trip to the hospital, which is the only thing we could figure out would cause the positive result. We told the nurse this at the time, and my wife denied ever using any drugs. I obviously backed her up on that. When we were told she popped on the test, the nursing staff did not act like it was a big deal. I did a little quick googling while we were waiting on labor and found several cases in PA and OH where a similar incident occurred, caused by poppy seed bagels. In both of those cases, CPS became involved and took away the child without any other proof of drug use. Jesus Christ, guys, can you imagine your kid getting taken away because you ate a poppy seed bagel? Insane. Either way, this obviously concerned me, so later on that night I asked our nurse what would happen as a result of the positive drug test, and she dismissed it, saying it was not a big deal. I asked if CPS would be involved, and she said no. That was a relief to us. Fast forward to delivery, the baby ended up coming via C-section a little after midnight. The same nurse we asked about CPS and the drug test helped my wife breastfeed for the first time, and everything was great. We waited in the recovery room while our room in the mother/baby unit was being readied. And this is where things started to fall apart. At the M/B unit, I noticed the nurses being a little short with my wife. Being that it was about 4 AM, I thought it might have just been late and near the end of their shift. I was also very tired at that point, having been up for something like 36 hours, so I let it go. After a little rest, we all woke up around 9 or 10 and my wife went to breastfeed. She was having a little trouble and I went out of the room to find a nurse to give her some help. A lactation consultant came in and proceeded to tell us that we were not allowed to breastfeed because my wife tested positive for drugs and that our baby would have to be bottle fed for his entire stay. My wife and I were very upset, since our plan all along had been to breastfeed, and there are a lot of issues getting a baby to latch once he has been on the bottle, not to mention my wife was not on drugs. I started asking the nurse about CPS, and she said that they would be notified and a social worker would come to our room to talk to us about drug use. My wife was in absolute tears. I was on the verge of full-blown anger. I asked to speak to the head nurse and explained that my wife had already breastfed and had been helped by another nurse for the labor unit. We had a doctor, the head nurse and the lactation consultant in the room a few minutes later. I went through the whole set of events with them, explained about the bagel, showed them on my Amex app that we had been to Eisenstein's Bagels mere hours before showing up at the hospital, that my wife and I are both attorneys, we have zero experience with anything like this, or I would not be asking on Reddit, and essentially asked why we were being treated like criminals when there was a plausible legal way opioids could have been in her system at such a small trace level. Long story short, they allowed my wife to continue to breastfeed despite it going against their policy. It was a "we cannot help you, but we won't stop you" situation, with the head nurse telling me where I could find the info on lactation in their info packets. This was not ideal, since we still felt like the hospital staff were not there to really help us anymore, but it was better than nothing. I also called a friend of mine who is high up in their medical system and ended up with a personal visit to our room from the hospital system's VP of Patient Experience and their OB chair, where they apologized for the way we were initially treated. We were given back all the privileges to use the lactation consultants again. Now, while that is all well and good, the hospital is still mandated to report the incident to CPS, which they did, as well as a urine test on the baby, which came back negative. A social worker did stop by our room, of course while I was not there, and counseled my wife on opioid withdrawal, which upset her again. Near the end of our 3-day stay, a CPS agent finally came to our room. We told her the whole story, explained about the bagel, showed her the receipt and explained our professions. Not that attorneys cannot do drugs, but I've seen people on very hard drugs and I don't think they are getting their law degree anytime soon. We were generally cooperative and the agent seemed understanding. The agent had my wife sign a safety plan, which I did not read first. She asked if she could view our home and I said she could. We left the hospital and I met her at my house right away. She asked where the baby would be sleeping and I took her to our bedroom where we have the playpen set up for while our baby is little until he can move to his own room. I started to take her to the baby's room, but she said there was not a need. We talked about the next steps and my wife will need to see a drug counselor for evaluation before the agent said she could close the file. Again, the CPS agent seemed very understanding and indicated multiple times that this seemed pretty open and shut. She even said she had looked up poppy seeds from foods triggering a drug test and saw it was very possible. The next day my wife and son were discharged. On her paperwork states that she tested positive for drugs and that we've been in contact with CPS. This is the paperwork we have to give our new pediatrician tomorrow, so we are looking forward to having to relive some of this again with him. I also found the safety plan that my wife signed and it states that CPS will come to the home for weekly visits with no clear end date. This was written in by the agent, it is not boilerplate. I am planning to call the CPS again tomorrow and ask her if the weekly visits are necessary and if we can get the evaluation done ASAP. My question for the sub is, have we made some mistakes here that we can correct, or are we doing the right thing in being as cooperative as we can? We understand CPS is an investigative agency and we have nothing to hide, but I am fearful of this stupid drug test following us around for years. We want nothing more than to close this case and move on, but we have a huge fear of the unknown about what is going to happen, especially being new parents under a microscope. Update: our visit to the pediatrician went great. I mentioned the bagel incident to the doctor since it was noted in the records we gave her from the hospital and she had seen it happen before. Moved right past it and onto how the little guy was doing. He's doing great and this made my wife and I feel a lot better. Update number 2, I called the CPS investigator about 3 weeks ago to follow up with her visit to our house. She told me she had no concerns and asked her supervisor to waive the drug counselor evaluation of my wife so that she could just close the case, which is great. However, since then I've only been able to reach the agent one other time about 2 weeks ago and she was still waiting to hear back from the supervisor. I call about once every 4 to 5 days and leave a message, but no return call yet. I have to fight my knee-jerk reaction to call every day or phone her supervisor. Last update, I finally called the supervisor for our investigator after more than 3 weeks of no response. The super called me back within an hour and recalled our case. She confirmed that the request to waive the drug counseling evaluation was approved and the case was essentially closed. The investigator has 60 days to file her report and we would receive a letter after that with the official disposition, but nothing more would happen on our end. I want to thank all the great responses I got on here, it really helped calm my nerves. On a side note, my friend who works in the hospital system texted me yesterday to let me know this exact same situation happened to someone else last week, to someone she also knows. Beware the everything bagel. And now a surprising update to the tested positive for drugs story. And so we thought that this was a done deal, that we would get the letter in the mail soon and that was the end of it. On July 12th, my wife got a call from a local number she did not recognize. She does not answer those and let it go to voicemail. And by the way guys, I forgot to say, if you have watched until here and enjoy my content, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. Thank you so much in advance. Either way, onto the story. When she checked the message, it was from a woman who identified herself as a drug addiction counselor working for the state, saying my wife needed to call her back within the next 2 hours. Since we were not expecting this, I called the counselor back, as I've been taking the lead on all this business since the start. The counselor was somewhat hostile with me when I tried explaining our whole situation, and that she must have us confused with another case, as ours should have been waived. I requested to call our case manager and confirm, but the counselor did not really care, said we were in her system and we needed to come in, or she was putting us down as refusing. We made an appointment for the next day, but I told her that I would try to call my case manager and find out what happened so that we would cancel if need be. I did for once actually get in touch with my case manager after leaving 3 voicemails on her machine and her supervisors in an hour. Apparently that is what it takes. The long and short of it is that while her supervisor approved the waiver, her supervisor did not, and we were placed back into the normal process. The case manager apologized and said that she would be at the appointment the next day, anticipating that the counselor would find that my wife is clean, write her report right then, and then hand it to our case manager, who would close the file with us in the room and hand us the termination letter. I also found out case manager had a family emergency those last few weeks of June. That is why I never hear back, but that she was sorry. At least that made sense. I called the counselor back to tell her what had happened and that we could see her the next day at X time, as she requested, along with our case manager. The lady then told us she had us down for Y time, and I said no, we had made it for X. She wanted to get out of work a little earlier since it was Friday, so she asked to move it up by half an hour, which I agreed to do, and I told her we would see her tomorrow. Fast forward to the next day, I took off of work and came along with wife's mother so someone could watch the baby, who also had to come. We met the counselor, who was very confused because she was convinced we were supposed to have been there earlier at Y time. I reminded her of the whole story about her wanting to get out of work early, and that is why we moved it to X. In my head, this was already off to a bad start. The counselor kind of blanked out and then checked her schedule and said we were lucky because no one else was scheduled, so she could take us like it was a favor and not when we were supposed to be there. My wife and I were already on edge, but we went into her office and the counselor proceeded to talk our ears off for 30 minutes while she did paperwork on our case. This lady really should not be at this job. She actually put the name of our case manager instead of my wife's name on all the paperwork, including the blank consent form she was going to ask my wife to sign that would have said my wife agrees to treatment based on blank, which I know she would not have signed, nor would I have sat there and let her sign basically a blank check without knowing what she was agreeing to go to treatment for and where. It was absurd. Luckily, the counselor got flustered after messing up the name and just redid the one actual form needed and said she would save the other form for later. She then asked a few basic questions and then leaned back and said she knew my wife did not do drugs, could tell as soon as she walked in. At this point, our case manager did arrive and she joined us in the meeting. We were really hoping this was it, but then after talking for a bit between the case manager and the counselor told us that my wife needed to be evaluated by an outpatient facility and take a drug test because she was an SB 512 and it was the law. It is not, it is just their departmental policy. My wife is on the verge of tears. I am getting annoyed. The case manager looks kind of annoyed and keeps shaking her head. The counselor then proceeds to tell us that she knows just where to send us so that everything gets done quickly and fairly. She adds in the lovely tidbit that if she did not believe my wife was telling the truth, she could send us somewhere that would fail her in order to get her into their system and charge her insurance. I am floored that she has the balls to say that to us so matter-of-factly, but I really don't want to rock the boat still, and they keep teasing us with light at the end of the tunnel, so I keep my peace. Once we get the outpatient urinalysis set up, the counselor says that once the results come back, she will get it faxed directly to our case manager. Our case manager, who genuinely seems like she wants this to be over as well, takes my card with my email and says that she will send us the case closed letter the second she gets the letter from the counselor. We have the outpatient scheduled for Monday, July 16th, which meant our results should be ready by the 23rd. So again, fast forward to Monday, after a long weekend of being a bundle of nerves and calling to other attorneys we know who say we should do this one last thing and comply before we do anything through the court. We showed up 15 minutes early to the drug counseling center, which was just a lovely place to take your wife. When we met the new counselor, she mistook us for being there on other business, and then, once she figured out we were here for her appointment, asked my wife what her drug of choice was. After a few minutes where my wife had to profusely deny any drug use and we had to explain that you can, in fact, test positive from just one bagel, the woman tried to say it was impossible and you had to eat like 40, but we came with some proof. She asked my wife to take the urinalysis test. She said she was supposed to watch her pee, but that my wife looked like a trustworthy person, and that was the whole meeting. Fast forward another anxious week of waiting, and we got a call from the urine test place on the 23rd saying all negative and to call the original counselor for the next steps. And here is where everything starts to become a problem again. I call the counselor and get no answer, which is annoying, but okay. I also call our case manager and leave her a message letting her know that we got the call, we are clean, and that if she needs anything to call me, but we are looking forward to getting the letter soon. I hear nothing the rest of the day, no return calls, no emails. The next day I call the counselor again and I do get her, but she immediately says that she's busy and cannot talk. I managed to ask her if she got the results and she said yes and hung up. But I was like, okay, at least I know she has seen them. I call our case manager's cell phone and leave a message there in case she has not been into the office, letting her know. Again, no calls back or email. Wednesday, I'm starting to get annoyed. Whenever you call any of these voicemails, each one says they will respond within 24 business hours, and I had no response from the actual CPS office in 48. I finally call the case manager's supervisor and leave a polite message relaying the situation and asking for a callback. No email, no calls. Thursday I call the counselor back, who is super rude, and quite frankly I think she might have me mixed up with someone else since she states that I called her the day before when I hadn't. However, I managed to get out of her that she sent the letter to our case manager saying no finding of abuse. So I call the case manager, I call the case manager's supervisor. No calls back, no emails. Friday I call but don't leave a message. Nothing today, but I did not call. So I am at a boiling point here. This is starting to affect my sleep, my work and my general well-being. I feel like I cannot relax until I know this is actually over, since we got bushwhacked last time when we thought it was done. I was actually on vacation over the weekend and was barely able to enjoy any of it because I would start to think about this stupid case and get upset. I also feel pretty powerless since all I can do is call like a moron over and over again. I've always been polite, but I'm close to snapping on one of these messages. I realize CPS in the city is beyond busy, but I'm not a person who gives another person my word and does not keep it, and it bothers me that we are a week past when we were promised this would be done. My wife goes back to work in 2 weeks, so this has been going on for 76 days now. Well past the 60 max CPS mandates, so what are my options here? I would like to first hear that this is done and second get a copy of the case findings letter stating the case disposition. There's no online case tracker and the only way to get information it seems is from CPS itself. I could go down to their office in person and try to get some answers, but I feel like that might be seen as confrontational and I do not want to escalate this. Calling seems to get me nowhere unless I start calling over and over in a single day, which frankly I am okay with if it gets an answer. I feel like it's premature to lawyer up, and I know that retaining another attorney is likely to prolong this whole ordeal, but I also am running out of patience and very tired of dealing with the total chaos of this office. Thoughts on what to do or what is going on here? Edit reworded the part about the wrong name on the forms, so it was clear that it was supposed to be my wife's name and not the case manager's. 10:30 AM update. I called the investigator and supervisor this morning first thing and left voicemail since it had been a few business days. The super just called me back and let me know that the investigator is finishing up the paperwork and we should get the letter soon. At first she said in a few weeks and then later a few days. Hopefully it's days, but with my luck so far it will be 2019. She said that she could not tell me the disposition over the phone, but that we had nothing to worry about if I caught her adrift. I did apologize for all the calls, but she said she totally understands and it is not a problem, they are just totally swamped. So at least I got a call back, I feel a little better and I think I can give them a week and see if we don't hear back via letter or email. 11:30 AM update. The CPS investigator just called. She never got anything at all from the original counselor, which has been the hold up. This, of course, the woman who nearly hung up on me twice last week because she was busy. The investigator is going to walk down to the counselor's office and get it from her directly and close the case hopefully today. The investigator will call me this afternoon or email me the letter with the final report. I will update if it happens. And another update, CPS agent never called me back or emailed. I have left 2 messages yesterday and today asking for a call to let me know what is going on. Look at calling the city solicitor's office and speaking to the DSS attorney on Monday. We are going on 12 weeks come Thursday. Final update. After a flurry of phone calls this morning to everyone I could possibly find from the city solicitor's office to the State Department of Human Resources, I got the close letter. As well as some of the other case file information, we are officially clear 80 days later. Whew guys, and I gotta say this was once again an absolute odyssey and probably the longest update we have ever read on this channel. Please let me know in the comments if you enjoy these extra long stories or if you enjoy stories that are a little bit shorter, but then we have more variety because maybe we can have around 3 to 4 to 5 stories per video. In addition, if you cannot get enough of me and want more Reddit stories, and in particular just no mother-in-law, then I would suggest to head over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more exclusive Reddit content. This is a great way to support me, and if you want the exclusive videos, subscriptions start at $3 per month. Either way, thank you so much for watching, I hope you have a fantastic day and I see you again tomorrow.